I am on a quest to try to become a main character in Baldur's Gate 3. So Baldur's Gate 3, it is a turn-based RPG game where you basically create a character and you go on an adventure. And it's fairly similar to how you would play tabletop D&D. And I have specifically chosen to make myself a Warlock outfit just because I really liked it and I wanted to see if I could do it. In my last video, I made the bracers and I had originally planned to do 3 videos. So one for the bracers, one for the corset belt and one for the tunic. But I got impatient and I just really wanted to create the whole thing. So in this video, I'll be making the corset belt and the tunic. So stay tuned for the final reveal at the end. And for the corset belt, I started off by just sketching it out. This is a pretty standard underbust corset, but for the sides and the back, it doesn't really go below the waistline. There is also a belt keeping it in place that just sits in the waistline and is closed up in the front and is held in place by a flap in the back. There is quite a big belt buckle and the holes for the belt seems to have grommets. I did question the placement of the belt strap, but I think that's just a mistake that was made. In addition to the belt, there are some sort of metal eyelets, 2 pairs on top and 2 pairs on the bottom. So after sketching it out and having the plan ready in my head, I started making a mock-up. And I made this using 2 different types of leftover coutil, which is why there are 2 shades of coutil. And I put in some plastic boning just to sort of make sure it fit correctly in the end. All the boning is in the mock-up, so I'm just gonna test it around myself just to see if it looks good. Yeah, I do think that is the shape that I'm looking for. I'm just gonna cut the faux leather. This is the same one that I used for the details on the bracers. Here we go. So I'll be sandwich sewing these from like the back towards the front. Here it is. I think it looks fairly similar to the original. I'm gonna start with the boning. And for the front, I want to use flat steel because I want it to be really straight. But for everything else, I'll be using spiral steel. So let's try it on and see how it looks with the boning and everything. I think it should fit. Let's just double check. I think it's good. Yeah, so I'm gonna move on and I think maybe I'm gonna do the belt next. So I'm just going to sew around this, trim the edges a bit where it's necessary, and then see about making holes and stuff like that. And one thing about the back, the belt holder, it doesn't look like it is on the inside of the binding. It sort of looks like it wraps around the lower edge and then goes up. For likeness' sake, I'm gonna do what it looks like they've done, so. Now on to something I might regret doing. I want to stain the belt slightly along the middle. And what I tried previously that did work was that I took this textile marker and I sort of colored in some tissue paper. And I used that tissue paper to sort of dab on some of this coloring. I think I'm also going to do the same with the corset belt itself. Yeah. I've also cut the back sort of belt holder. So what I'm going to try to do, and hopefully that's going to work, is to just sew the coutil and the faux leather right sides together. I'm just gonna try to flatten it and then do a top stitch around. It looks kind of how I envisioned it and slightly better. This is sort of how it's gonna fit. One of the most difficult things for this project was finding the front closure. I'm not entirely sure what they are, but the closest thing I could find was eyelets used for drindles. They had these decorative metal pieces that you could sew on and use for lacing. So these, they are not very similar to what the pictures show. What I think I'll do though is use the back side of them, which is still a far cry from the reference, but a lot closer I feel. I'm gonna use the holes that are on it and just kind of use a gray thread to make it less visible. So that's it. I think it looks good. In the pictures, it looks like it's some sort of twine used to lace it up. I'm gonna use this cotton, but I'll need to dye it somehow and also treat the ends. I'm gonna try to dye using instant coffee. I've never done this before. I saw it on the webpage and I just figured, let's give that a try. In this bowl, there is instant coffee and vinegar. I'm just gonna try to soak this for 10 minutes maybe. This is what it looks like after a few hours. Not a lot of color change, but big enough. So now for the tips. So this is tips for the smallest size spiral steel boning. And I'm gonna try to use some tongs and just squeeze them on the ends. The thing is, it doesn't really stick that well because there's nothing really of friction on the inside. So I'm considering putting some super glue into the bottom of them. I feel like it worked. It's not like a terribly smooth finish, but it sort of gives it a bit more weight. I have received the rivets finally, so I'm gonna put those in. I think maybe I should have had like a rubber mallet or something, but I don't really care. I don't think it matters that much. Like that, and then the belt goes in here. So I'm gonna make the hole in this one first and then just trace it off here afterwards. I'm not sure why, but it turned out kind of crooked. It might be that the hole is a bit big so that it had room to move as I hammered it in. I think that might be it. I can't really fix that now, but I'm aware that it's crooked and it's probably because of the hammering. The only thing I'm really missing now is the belt buckle. So here it is, and I have just marked on where it should sit. So I'm just going to make an opening here for this pin. And I'm also going to make a sort of belt holder strap. So after finishing up the belt, I started working on the tunic. So the front is divided into two. So the red panel is made up by a lot of smaller pieces that are sewn together on a diagonal, and the diagonal shifts from the top towards the bottom. And it has slits along the sides up to the waist point. In terms of closing the tunic, there are buckles in the front. The back is fairly simple in terms of the shape, but there is this triangular piece in the back of the neck. And the black parts or dark gray parts seem to be quilted. There are brown leather details throughout. These are the pattern pieces for the tunic part. So this one will be cut in a red linen, just a basic linen fabric. Also for this piece in the back. These two I'm gonna cut in this black cotton fabric, but I just want to cut the lining first to just sort of see that everything fits, because I did a mock-up, but it was like semi-successful. I made changes and hopefully this is gonna look good in the end. So I finished the lining, just gonna try it on just to see if everything fits. There is something about this color scheme that makes me feel like some sort of sci-fi villain. I think it fits. I'll need to double check in a mirror. I made a slight change. I just felt like the back was a bit flat. It felt like it kind of dragged on it a bit. So I just opened up the back seam. I have some padding. I think this is some sort of poly something that I'm going to try to use for the quilted parts. I traced off the lines for these pieces and then I just put them on top of the padding and sewed down the lines. And then I just trimmed off the excess and overlocked around them. Here are the little pieces for the neck part. And I just sewed these together, pressed them open and just top stitched. And then I started cutting the pieces for the front, and this took a while. Here are all the little pieces that will make up the top part of the front panel. So this is just to the waist. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 below the waist. Hopefully this is gonna work and look good in the end. And be worth the time that it takes to do it this way. It wouldn't have looked right otherwise, I think. The red parts are done. In between the red fabric and the black fabric, there seems to be some sort of piping. I was considering making my own from the faux leather that I have. So what I've done is to just take a piece of that and put it along the edge of the neck. So I am gonna try to sew this on to the back. They are finished. I am going to sew these together, right sides facing each other, and then I'm going to try to sew on the neck piece afterwards. And then if that works, I'm going to do the same with the front. And once that was done, I could do the same to the front panel. So I just basted this onto the black side and then sew the two parts together afterwards. I'll be sewing these seams now. I've been thinking a bit about whether or not to use piping or to use binding on certain parts of this project, and I'm considering using piping on the center front, on the collar, and I also think I want piping instead of binding in the slits. It's easier to sort of mold it and just cut away the seam allowance. I want to do binding in the armholes and maybe on the hem. I have cut the collar and I've just basted some piping around the edge. So I'm just going to pin this somehow and try to sew around and then try to turn it out. I've just finished up the piping on the front as well as just the finish of the sides. So that is done. And I think before doing anything else, I'm going to sew on the collar. Okay, there is a slight puckering here. I can also see that when turning this over, because I have piping, I have to stretch this more. It is a bit too far to the front. So I did probably make it a bit too long. I'm gonna live with that, it's fine. And then we're gonna continue with the front. And for that, I am going to make strips of the faux leather. One strip up here, one around, and I'll be giving it buckles. Here are the little buckles. And I'm very happy with these. They match the original quite well. I just spent the last 6 hours redoing most of the stuff that I've done the last few days. Mainly reattaching the collar and putting on the leather details again. So now it should be correct. I'm gonna start making the closure in the front, and I have just cut the pieces for that, so I'm going to do that the same way that I did the belt, where I have a layer of Quilted in between two layers of the faux leather, and I'm going to attach them using a rivet. To finish off the armholes and the hem, I just cut strips of the faux leather and used that as binding. And I basted or pinned it quite heavily in place so that I could just sew it in place using one seam of top stitching. So I'm in the game and I'm gonna try to make a character that looks sort of like me that I can use as inspiration for the final look. So I think I'm gonna have to choose a human. I don't really have the pointy ears or horns or anything like that. But in terms of class, I'm gonna choose Warlock. So we have the outfit, that's good. And I'm just gonna edit her appearance. And I'm gonna try to find the face that looks the most like mine. And keep in mind that none of these are particularly like me. And she has a bit more like almond-shaped eyes. She has a dimple in her chin, which is not something that I have. She has a bit more like a sad look, but maybe so far the most like me, maybe. But I'm gonna try this. I'm not as tan as this lady right now. Maybe here somewhere. And let's face it, we'll have to add some maturity for like under eye and forehead wrinkles and so on. There. Body art, I could do something like this. This would look really cool, I think. I'm not sure if I'll be able to replicate that though. I think maybe I could do like a white tattoo. Maybe I'm just gonna leave it at this for now and we'll see. In terms of eyes, I have sort of like hazel-ish, maybe like that. I think maybe it's more like this one. Makeup, I want to do something that's not what I would normally maybe do. Could be fun to do something like this. I'm gonna try for this. A lip tint, I do have some like darker reds that I could use to just kind of have like a smidge. Okay, we'll go for that for now. So in terms of hair color, I think mine is a brown mostly. Like this would be super cool, but I think maybe I would need extensions for this. Like the first tab that I made had this look. I can't make my braid that long. This is actually what I ended up doing in the end. But I could do that. I could do like a Minthara look. For now, I'm gonna try that. I'm gonna add graying, a few strands here and there. There, that's realistic. A few hairs. I know a lot of people have used this. Could try it. It kind of looks cool with the more messy hair, I think. So this is it. And she's going out in the world. So this is as close as I'll probably ever get to being a character in the Baldur's Gate 3 universe. So if you appreciated this video, leaving a like really helps out. Consider subscribing, that is free and you can unsubscribe anytime. It just basically tells YouTube that you like the content and it's worth checking out. Thank you so much for watching and I hope to see you in the next video. Bye for now.